Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Shawar Sahab, Jafar Sahab, Ashfaq Sahab, distinguished friends in Islamabad and Karachi and Lahore and elsewhere, Assalamu alaikum. It's a real pleasure and an honor for me to be here in the company of such an illustrious group. Accountants have always been considered a very smart group. I think they are smart like economists, but perhaps have more personality. And it's always a pleasure for me to come and speak to you, especially at a time like this when our country is facing a difficult economic situation, and there is need for us to talk to each other and be frank and honest and level with each other and try to learn from each other and try to get the best minds to put their ideas together and have the government the humility and the wisdom to benefit from those ideas. So let me start by saying that a budget has been presented. It was based on consultation. I spent maybe hundreds of hours in talking to different stakeholders. The greatest input was sought from our industry and business. And we have tried to put together a budget that we think reflects the demands of the times, as well as to provide a framework for stabilizing the economy and then moving on to have a platform for growth. At the same time, this is a time for everybody to pitch in. If we are to try and steer this country into an area of prosperity and to fulfill the aspirations of our people, then we have to take some decisions which are tough and which demand sacrifice. The question that the fair-minded people have to ask is, are we being careful? Are we being fair in demanding the degree and the level of sacrifice? And are we also participating in that process? So I want to start by asking the question that, why are we where we are? And I always say that we should look at the big facts of our country, because the interplay of politics and economics and society has created a situation which has existed in this country for many decades now. So what are some of the big facts that I, as a student of Pakistan, when I look at it, I see? The first big fact is that in the 72 years that we have been fortunate to have this country, no single government, no single prime minister has ever completed his or her tenure. So we have a dysfunctionality at the heart of our national life. And I say it because it impacts upon the economy, in that the requirement of the markets and the requirements of the businessmen who take decisions is for a continuity of policies, for a predictable framework. So if we have a situation and a history of this sort, it does impact upon this very fundamental requirement. So this is the first point, and I want you to ponder over it just like I am doing, and we can have this conversation on how to actually get some of these things behind us. And perhaps we are in the process of getting this one big fact behind us. The other big fact about Pakistan is that we have never had a growth trend that has lasted more than 4 years. China, for example, has had, an average growth rate of 10% for more than 30 years. But here in our country, we have never ever had a growth trend that has lasted beyond 4. So why do these growth spurts fizzle out? And how can we make these growth spurts get converted into long-term economic trends? This is a question I want to pose, because in the 60s, perhaps in the 80s, maybe in the 2000s, we had a period, a short period, where the growth rates were beginning to look attractive, but they fizzled out. And that is why we have a very checkered history of going to the IMF and, being always in a position of recovering from one or the other sort of a crisis. And as a result, we have failed because we've not had the growth trends for a long period of time consecutively. We have not been able to deliver the kind of prosperity that our people aspire for. So the third thing is that we don't like to do business with others. This, in my view, is the third big fact about Pakistan. And you, as advisors to the business community, and my colleagues who are here and in Karachi and Lahore, who are big businesses, have to begin to ask and answer this question. Why is it that we never like to do business with others? The big lesson of history is that if you want to develop, you must sell your products to others. But here in our country, no matter who is in government, whether it's the military or the civilians, whether it's one party or the other, whether it's one decade or the other, somehow we never can export our products to others, and we cannot attract others to come and do business with us here. And nobody has done it alone. In the history of the world, we cannot find any example where countries have developed on their own. So we have to begin to try and figure, these things out. And the fourth is, why do we have such excessive government? In every facet of our life, in every part of our economy, and why are we unable to somehow contain the government to what it is required to do, which is to make policies, which is to regulate, which is to provide national defense and judiciary and police services and provide basic law and order, and to not get into the business of running business. So I want to start by that, by thinking about what is it about us that we have to try as a country to come together and begin to answer. Because the way forward cannot come out of a bad diagnosis. Now I want to turn to where we were, where this government comes in, and what the situation was at that time. I don't want to make it too partisan. I don't want to make it, I just want to state some facts. When this government came in, the debt and liabilities were reaching 3,100 billion rupees, or 3.1 trillion. Sorry, it's 31,000 billion. Okay. And a component of that was the export, was the foreign component was $97 billion. Now, if we have that kind of a burden, and what had happened to our exports? Well, they had not risen at all in 5 years. The rate of growth of exports was 0%. and there was a determination to keep the currency overvalued. And tens of billions of dollars of our national reserves were blown to keep that currency artificially overvalued, which made imports very cheap. And as a result, we had 0% growth in exports, a massive, inflow of imports, and a trade deficit of $32 billion, and a current account deficit of $20 billion. So on the one hand, you are required to pay 2,000 billion just for the interest, and you have basically no exports to pay from. And at the same time, as I said, because there had been no growth in exports, the prospects looked pretty grim. So what has been the response? What have we begun to do? And before I go there, the fiscal deficit, which is the difference between what you earn and what you spend, that was already reaching like 2.3 trillion for just 1 year. तो एक तरफ आपके पास कोई एक्सपोर्ट्स नहीं है, आपके इंपोर्ट्स को फाइनेंस करना है, दूसरी जानिब आपने $100 बिलियन बोरो किए हैं, 31,000 टोटल बोरो किए हुए हैं रूपी टर्म्स में, and you have to pay all this. There's no escape from that. And as a result, the reserves, had fallen in the last 2 years of the previous government from about 18 billion to less than 10 billion, close to $9 billion. तो अब करना क्या है? पहली चीज तो ये है कि we must begin to stabilize the economy and tackle the immediate threats. Because you cannot talk of high growth and you cannot use these fancy terms of multipliers and all that when you are facing a very grim situation. And also on growth, let me tell you, there are different types of growth. It's not just the growth rate, it's the quality of the growth. It's the inclusiveness in the growth process. There's a question of who is benefiting and who is not from growth. We had growth in the 60s, but it cost us our country because many people felt excluded from it. If we have a growth, we have to ask, where is the growth coming from? देखिए, growth के जो the parameters होते हैं is consumption and investment and exports. If somebody says, oh, look at me, I made a growth rate of 5%, you have to say, did it come from exports? Did it come from investment? Or did it come from consumption? You answer that question. A person can take a credit card and go and have a very good time consuming it, and then split and let somebody else take care of the bill. And boast about what a high level of consumption I had. So it's very important that when we talk of growth, it's not in a very simple, unidimensional way. That we begin to ask the question that, yes, what sort of a growth do we want? In which a large number of people participate? And if yes, how? So what I'm saying is that the immediate goal is to stabilize, which means what? Which means that we have to tackle the external threat and the fiscal threat. तो उसके लिए क्या किया गया external threat के लिए? First, resources were mobilized from friendly countries, $9.2 billion. Deferred oil payment facility was sought from Saudi Arabia for $3.2 billion. Well, Islamic Development Bank for $1.1 billion. Import duties were put to curtail imports. The export sector was subsidized with lower electricity prices, lower gas prices, lower subsidy on loans. All this happened. And as a result, the current account deficit was brought down by about 7 billion. At the same time, we chose to go to the IMF. Why are we going to the IMF? We are going to the IMF because the $6 billion partnership we hope to have with them is at a rate of interest which is lower than what we get if we borrow from commercial markets. The second reason is because we want to trigger a follow-on effect from other international agencies to give us additional financing. And I will share with you an important development on that front that has taken place today. So we hope to lock in more than $3 to $4 billion on that. And because we want to tell the world that we are ready to take the tough decisions, that we are ready for imposing discipline upon ourselves, कि हम अपनी हैसियत के साथ चलना चाहते हैं. और ये जो लोग बैठ के कहते हैं कि ये जी IMF ने बजट बना दिया और IMF के इशारे पे लोग चल रहे हैं, don't believe any of that crap. What we have to do is decide what is the best for Pakistan. And if somebody or the other, whether it's in the IMF or the World Bank or some other friendly country of ours, they also think that it's good for us, well, fine. क्या हमें फिस्कल डिसिप्लिन नहीं करना चाहिए? क्या हमें रेवेन्यू मोबिलाइज नहीं करना चाहिए? क्या हमें हार्ड डिसीजंस नहीं लेनी चाहिए ऑन द प्रोविजन ऑफ सब्सिडीज? तो इसमें क्या किसी को दिक्कत हो रही है? Why are they trying to confuse the public by using loaded statements and trying to give them a kind of a false picture? If they have an alternative model in which you don't mobilize revenues, in which you don't take tough decisions, in which you don't stabilize the economy, in which you don't try to restrict imports, in which you don't subsidize exports, then let them come out and share that. So we are open for any ideas. Because if we can have a painless way of doing a surgery, then let them come out and share that with us, and who will not welcome that suggestion? But let us not play politics. Let us not try to get attention by simply saying provocative things without being constructive, without being realistic, without being practical, without posing the fundamental question, how can we steer this country out of a bad economic situation? So that was the first decision, to try and get a handle on the external front. And I shared with you some of the things that were done. The second decision that we have made, and which we are making, is to control the fiscal side of things. Uske liye kya karna hai? There are two sides to that. One is revenue, the other is costs or expenditure. So we got, a colleague of yours, Shabar Zaidi Saab, to manage the revenue side. I think most people would think he's a great choice. even though he's not an economist, but that's okay. So, and we have put a challenging target. And there are some people who have made it a business to come on television every evening and say, ये तो बड़ा challenging target है. अगर requirement ही challenging target की है, तो फिर और कौन सा target हो? Nobody likes to raise taxes because it's difficult. Because it upsets people. Because you run into powerful lobbies. It's not a walk in the park. So one gets a little bit, surprised, even irritated by people who simply come and say कि ये तो बड़ा challenging target है. भाई अगर आपको 2,900 बिलियन जो हैं देने हैं सूद में, जो कि और लोगों ने लिया कर्ज, और अब क्रेडिट कार्ड का बिल आपके हाथ में है, अगर 2,900 देने हैं तो कहां से देंगे? जबकि अगर 5,500 हो जाते हैं, उसमें से 57% जो हैं वो सूबों को चले जाते हैं. तो और बकाया रेवेन्यूज मिला के डिविजिबल पूल से द फेडरल गवर्नमेंट एंड्स अप विद ओनली 3,600 बिलियन, and out of that 2,900 billion will go for paying interest for past loans. And then from the 700 billion that are left, you have to take care of the entire civilian bureaucracy, you have to take care of Azad Jammu and Kashmir, you have to take care of Gilgit-Baltistan, you have to take care of the merged districts of FATA, you have to take care of your defending your borders and your nation, and doing a development program. So yes, I think we have to challenge ourselves. And we should do it with our head high and with all the sincere effort. We should try to fulfill that. And inshallah, God will help, and because of our sincerity and good effort and the solid teamwork, we will be able to make this transition as short and as painless as possible. Now, about the other side. And on this, since there were some comments from my friend, the speaker from Karachi, देखें, हम क्या कह रहे हैं? हम ये नहीं कह रहे हैं कि जो exporters हैं, वो हमारे लिए बहुत अहम नहीं हैं. In fact, we are saying that the exporters are the single most important group in this country for us at this moment. And that's why we are giving them from our hard-earned, very small pool of money that we have. We are willing to subsidize their electricity, we are willing to subsidize their gas, we are willing to subsidize their loans. And we don't want to impose any kind of a tax. But what we are saying is, if you are selling your products to your own people in this country, which are not exports, please pay taxes on those. Please be like the rest of the people and the businesses. अगर आप हमारे लोग हमें शब्बर ज़ैदी साहब हमें बता रहे हैं कि टेक्सटाइल अगर 1200 अरब रुपए की डोमेस्टिक सेल करती है और 6 अरब टैक्स देती है, तो दैट्स नॉट राइट. क्या मुझे कोई इसमें कोई न फख्र हो रहा है न खुशी हो रही है ये नंबर शेयर करते हुए आपके साथ? But it cannot go on. And what we are saying is, please cooperate with us in paying the tax on the domestic sale of your products, not on your exports. We are not saying that. We are very humbly asking you to do your duty in paying your taxes on the domestic sale. अगर इसमें हम कसूरदार हैं ये कहने में, तो आप बताएं। हाँ, उनकी एक बात में बहुत वजन है, उनकी एक बात में बहुत मेरिट है। वो ये कहते हैं कि रिफंड्स जो हैं उनके फंस न जाएं और उनकी लिक्विडिटी पे असर इतना न पड़े कि उनकी बिजनेसेस मुतासिर हों, इंक्लूडिंग देयर एक्सपोर्ट्स। एंड आई थिंक वी हैव टू accept and acknowledge the validity of that point. And that's why I went to Karachi, I went to Lahore, and I think Saath came with us, and I told them, okay, let us sit together and figure out a mechanism for refunds that is acceptable to you, that originates from you, where the time lag can be made minimal. And I think some good ideas have come up on that. Because our intention as the finance minister, it's not our intention to continue to use your money and block it for our purposes. What we are saying is this is a new regime and we all have to try and do our part. And I'm making a firm and solemn commitment in front of, I'm told 1,000+ people tonight. I'll work very, very hard to ensure that this problem is solved once and for all. So this is the point. अब austerity में हम क्या कर रहे हैं? देखें, where can we cut? We can only cut in the civilian government budget, which we did. From last year to this year, we are reducing it by about $50 billion, 50 billion rupees. And in an extraordinary gesture, जो कभी इस मुल्क की शायद तारीख में नहीं हुआ हो, the armed forces budget is being frozen at last year's level. So let us give a big hand to our armed forces also and their leadership, for they are saying and we are saying कि अगर sacrifice करनी है तो सबने करनी है। ये नहीं कि दूसरों से मांगो और खुद न दो सैक्रिफाइस। और हमने सोचा कि हम कहां पे, अगर ऑस्टेरिटी के जमाने में भी वो क्या एरियाज हैं जहां हमें मदद करनी चाहिए, आखिर कौन है मदद के हकदार। एंड वी सेड कि देयर आर 3 groups. First, I said the businesses, especially the exporters, and I told you that we have over 100 billion of subsidies earmarked for them. The second are the most vulnerable people of this country. We said that we must reach out to them. ये जो भुलाए गए हैं, जो कि गरीब बेवाएं हैं, वो लोग जिनके पास तकरीबन खाने के लिए भी नहीं, जो अगर बीमार हो जाए तो उनकी लाइफ टाइम की सेविंग्स खत्म हो जाती है। So we reached out to them, and what we did is we increased the budget for our social safety nets from 100 billion to 191 billion. We almost doubled it. Similarly, we said कि अगर तेल की कीमतें बढ़ती हैं और उसकी वजह से जो हमारे बस में नहीं है, इलेक्ट्रिसिटी प्राइसेस बढ़ती हैं, तो we will protect those consumers who use the least amount of electricity, those who use below 300 units of electricity, which is 75% of the consumers. हम उनके ऊपर कोई बोझ नहीं पड़ने देंगे and we will subsidize. लेकिन जो स्विमिंग पूल्स को हीट कर रहे हैं इलेक्ट्रिसिटी से, we don't want to subsidize them. तो हमने 216 अरब रुपए रखे हैं इस बिजली की सब्सिडी के लिए, जो कि लोएस्ट कंज्यूमर्स के लिए। तीसरा, हमने कहा कि जो सबसे बैकवर्ड या अंडर डेवलप्ड एरिया है इस मुल्क का, who have witnessed war and insurgency and terrorism and counter-terrorism, and who have been neglected for 72 years as the tribal areas of this country. और हम चाहते हैं वो इंटीग्रेट हों, वो पाकिस्तान के बकाया अवाम की तरह उनको अपॉर्चुनिटीज मिलें, वहाँ तालीम का निज़ाम इम्प्रूव हो, and therefore we are putting 152 billion rupees for them. तो ये 3 या 4 ग्रुप्स हैं जिनके लिए हम इस ट्रांजिशन को जिस हद तक मुमकिन हो उसको पेनलेस बनाना चाहते हैं. सो दिस इज वेयर वी आर. अब आप इसके अलावा इस बजट में जो दूसरी चीजें हैं कि रिफॉर्म्स इन एग्रीकल्चर, ए नेशनल डेवलपमेंट प्रोग्राम, ways to tackle inflation and unemployment, मैं इतनी डिटेल में नहीं जाना चाहता हूं. I want to say कि जिस तरह मैंने कहा कि हम IMF प्रोग्राम 3 जुलाई को IMF का बोर्ड विल मीट and they will be inshallah making a positive decision on our program. लेकिन एक जो बड़ी डेवलपमेंट है which I want to share with you, the Asian Development Bank has agreed to provide $3.4 extra billion. ये फैसला आज ही हुआ है और ये जो है जो इसकी खूबसूरती है इस डेवलपमेंट की वो ये है कि दिस इज नॉट टाइड टू एनी प्रोजेक्ट, दिस इज बजटरी सपोर्ट. दिस इज व्हाट वी कॉल प्रोग्राम लोन इंस्टेड ऑफ प्रोजेक्ट लोन. और इसमें से $2.1 बिलियन जो हैं वो इसी साल मिलेंगे, starting from the first quarter. So this will help the situation of the reserves and it will help calm the nerves of some people. And it will give the confidence that I think we are all attempting to have. So let me try and, conclude by saying that yes, it's difficult. Lekin most things that are worthwhile in life are difficult. And we have 2 choices. Either we can abandon the pursuit or we can redouble the effort. I think we will redouble the effort. And inshallah, with the support of all of you and our friends in the international community, we will weather this storm. And inshallah, we will give to the people of Pakistan the destiny they deserve. And I want to conclude by saying I know that you have an ordinance that is on the desk of the finance ministry. And inshallah, the good news that I can share with you that will be done. Inshallah on Monday. So thank you very much. Always a pleasure.